with something short on the parsha. I had a difficulty choosing which vart, so maybe we'll share both, or maybe we won't. There's the parsha is fascinating. Yosef Atzadik, he's thrown into the pit. Reuven says, "Why are we killing him? Just throw him into the pit." And of course, right there, everyone begins with the connections. How deep was the pit? The connections to Chanukah, etc. But the psukim continue. What did the brothers do after they threw him into the pit? Vayeishev, they sat down, le'achol lechem. They sat down to have some bread. Vayisu einayim, they raised their eyes. Vayiru, and they saw, v'nei archas yishmaelim ba migilad. The Arabs are coming from Gilad. Ugmaleim noisin achayis riva loyit holchem lahayred mitzrayim. Yehuda says to his brothers, "Ma betza ki narig zachinu." What gain do we have with killing him? V'chisinu esdamai. Lechu, let's go and sell him to the Arabs. V'yadenu al tiyibai ki achinu b'sareinu. Lamaisi, he's our brothers, and the brothers listen to him. Okay, a wonderful story. There's one detail in this story which you can miss, but it's so bothersome. They throw him into the pit, and then what do? They sit down to eat. They see the Arabs coming, and Yehuda says, "Why should we kill him? Let's sell him." I don't understand. How can you eat at that moment? The brothers, they just took Yosef Atzadik. They hated him. They passed him. He was Chayim Aves. All the Torah. But what's pshat that they sat down to eat? So much so, the Chizkuni comes along and says, they didn't sit right by the pit. You know why? They didn't want to hear the cries of Yosef Atzadik while they were eating. Sounds quite cruel and, I don't know, disgusting perhaps. And indeed, comes like Rabbeinu Bachayai, and he quotes a medrash. Says the medrash to him, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Atem machartem achichem. You sold your brother. Mitoich meichel umishteh. From a mitzvah party. Shenemar, as the apostle says, V'yeshu lechol lechem. Harei benechem nimkerim b'shusha mitoich meichel umishteh. Says Rabbeinu Bachaya was indeed incorrect. Of course, we always preface, we're talking about the Shiftei Ka. We're talking about the Shevatim. We have to be careful how we talk about such giants to glean a little bit and understand. But says Rabbeinu Bachaya, indeed, this was why the Gezerah was made, Bisman, the Purim story, that we're going to be sold, that we're going to be destroyed, Haman Arasha, during the party. Because how could the brothers dare sit down and eat at that moment? But on the flip side, there's an Alshich HaKadosh. Comes on the Alshich, and he asks, and he has a completely different answer. Says the Alshich, V'hinei, I think that's a typo. They sat to eat bread. They considered him like a stranger. Anoshim sadikim kahem. Sadikim like the Shiftei Ka. Yeshvu lecho lechem ulahativ libam achrias asa ra. Ask the Alshich, how is it possible? Okay, Rabbeinu Bachaya quotes a medrash that indeed they were at fault, but the Alshich can't fathom. How is such a thing possible? Says the Alshich, Ach achshava zois asu laman. You know why they did this? They did this so that shechachach ish chamasam. They did this so they could calm down. Ulai yuchlu hayil. Maybe they'll be able to find a way to help. Hayil yaratz charayin apam mehem v'yirachamu. Maybe they'll find a way to be merciful. And guess what? The kain haya. Their fire calmed down, mehem, and they listened to Yehuda, and they sold him to the Arabs. Says the Alshich, they didn't sit down to party. They didn't sit down to celebrate over the fact that they rid themselves of this evil Yosef. Exactly the opposite. They realized that what they did was a tremendous step. And they understood there's always that possibility. It was a Sanhedrin. They downed the case. But who's to know? But there was such a fire burning inside them, sometimes you just can't see straight. Says the Alshich. So what do? They said, you know what? Let's have something to eat. Let's have something to drink. Let's relax. Let's calm down. And kachava. After they calmed down, Yehuda looks up, the Arabs are coming, and they listened to Yehuda. Says the Alshich. Yeah, what's your question?
Why don't do that after?
What do you mean? Why do they only do that after? So good. In a chanami, it could be that there's a point for din. And there's a point for Rachamim. And Al Pi Din, they paskin Dius Chayim Misa, but now it's her brother, says the Alshich. From here, when I saw these two diametrically opposed approaches, I think that this is the vantage point. If we were a little camera looking in at a Seudah, at a Hanukkah party, at a Leil Shabbos, we could see these two approaches play out. There are some times that unfortunately we could see the words of the Medrash. You sit down to eat amidst such a terrible thing, Gezeras Purim, Gezeras Haman. And sometimes the food could have the exact opposite approach. It could calm, it could cool, it could get you more focused. And where do we see this? How can we say such a thing? It's a very famous Mishnah and Avos. The Mishnah and Avos teaches us, Rabbi Shimon Aimer, Shloisha sha'achlu al shulchan echad v'loi amru alav divrei Torah. 3 people sit down to eat, and they don't say a dvar Torah, ki ilu achlu mizivchei mesim. It's as if they ate from zivchei mesim, says Rashi. What does that mean? Avodah zara. Shenemar ki kol shulchanas malakei yisayam b'li makam. Aval shloisha sha'achlu al shulchan echad v'amru alav divrei Torah, ki ilu achlu mishulchan gavaya. It's as if you're eating from the table of Hashem. Shenemar vaydabe Eli zeh shulchan asher lefnei Hashem. What do we see from this mission of Avos? Absolutely incredible. It's the same Suda. It's the same time. It's the same food. One injected a word of Torah, one did not. One is the Alshichs Suda, that the brother sat down with a kavana. We're upset. I need to calm down. I'm going to sit down and eat. And that alone saved Klal Yisrael. That alone calmed them down to the point that they listened to Yehuda. And when Yehuda said, let's sell him, they sold him. Or you could have the opposite. You could sit and you could eat and be merry. And then what is it? Then it's a Sudas Achashverosh. And of course, what does this have to do with Hanukkah? We all know the famous Mishnah Berurah. I think it's one of those things. It's a famous Mishnah Berurah that we all know as a famous Mishnah Berurah. But to apply it into a real life Hanukkah party is difficult. The Mishnah Berurah we all know, is there a din of Seudah and Chanukah? The answer is no. It's you may Mishnah v'simcha, correct. You may Haidais Hallel, correct, says the Mishnah Berurah. But if you say a Devar Torah, if you sing Shirais v'sishbachais, then the Suda is indeed elevated into a Seudas mitzvah, a mitzvah itself. So hopefully when we see the extreme nature what a Seudah could be, it could be Avodah Zarah mamish. The Mishnah says, Ki'ilu achlu mizivchei meisim. It's as if one is eating Avodah Zarah. Or it could be you're sitting at Hashem's table. We all know Leil Shabbos, the Shabbos Suda, Hashem pays for the meal. Why does Hashem pay for the meal? The mashal, I think we've said, there's Shimshon Pincus in Shabbos Malchus at the beginning, says such a simple but beautiful mashal. It says, you know why Hashem pays for the meal? Because you're sitting at Hashem's table. He says, imagine the Gadol Adar invites you over for a meal. We'll use Rav Chaim Kanievsky. Rav Chaim invites you for a Suda. So you go to the Kanievsky household and you sit down there and the Rebbetzin serves you a piece of, I don't know, gefilte fish, salmon, whatever. And they say, no, I'm okay. Interesting. Then she serves you soup. No, Maisa, I'm working on my precious. And Rav Chaim sitting there eating a soup. And then she serves you shtick chicken with rice. No, a tzaddik like myself, I don't really eat. I had a bite of challah. Chutzpah. Rav Chaim Kanievsky, the Gadol Adar gave you food. You eat with him. Says Shimshon Pincus, what's a Shabbos Suda? What are we doing on Shabbos? We're being misaneg im Hashem. So of course Hashem's going to pay for the meal. Of course it's an Indian to have a beautiful Suda, to have basar v'yayin, because you're sitting and you're eating with Hashem. But of course, it goes without saying that we have to heed to the words of the Alshichs, that this only will work if one does it with the right kavanas. And I'll conclude, which I found, there's a fine detail in the Alshichs, which I think runs a little bit deeper than we're saying. Because the Mishnah Avos, the Mishnah Berurah about having divrei Torah during your Chanukah Suda, that's all obvious. But in the Alshichs, what did the Alshichs say? Why did the brothers eat? Did he say that they sat down, they pulled out a Gemara and they learned? Did he say that they sat down and they sang a niggin? He said no. They realized that their ish chamasam was burning inside of them. So they ate with the kavana to calm down. That itself was enough to save their brothers. Which really means, if we put this into perspective, there are times one could be upset. One's not in a good mood. He's just not. He's angry. If he sits down and he eats, which he's going to do anyways, but he has the data kavana, why am I eating right now? Why am I drinking right now? Why am I taking a walk right now? I'm doing it to calm down so I could see life clearly again. So I don't do the wrong thing, that I make the right decisions. That's acting like the Shevatim. That's acting in the mannerism that could save Klal Yisrael, that could ultimately bring up Yosef from the pit, sell him to the Ishmaelim, and as they say, the rest is history.